I'm Ric Edelman. Have you ever wondered what is the total cost to raise a child? Whether or not you should be worried about inflation, or what a $15 million house looks like on the inside? Well, if you've got the questions, we've got the answers. All this coming up on this week's edition of The Truth About Money.
Best-selling author and founder of one of the nation's largest financial planning firms, Ric Edelman.
No financial show could be complete without a conversation about buying a house. So I asked my colleague Brandon Corso to find us a great buy. But I forgot to say, don't pick a place that costs $15 million.
Hey, Michael, Brandon Corso.
Brandon, Michael Moore.
Good to meet you.
Welcome to Cherry Tree Lane.
Thank you.
The prime 6 acres of Annapolis waterfront properties. This is the grand entry foyer. This is about 11-foot ceilings, gas-burning fireplace. This is the reception area with the curved staircase.
It's gorgeous. From everywhere you look, you see water, and that's what's so unique, I think, about it.
This becomes a 2-story atrium.
Wow.
This is a lovely room, the formal dining room.
Okay.
It's octagonal, has views on 3 sides.
Oh, my goodness.
Magnificent kitchen.
Wow.
Out those French doors is the pool and the pool house.
Wow, that's really gorgeous.
This kitchen has 4 separate dishwashers, 3 separate refrigerators, a separate freezer, and it's totally geared up for intimate family, a little entertaining, or, large parties. Let's go up to the 2nd floor and let me show you the master suite.
This is something.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think this is the nicest views because you're elevated.
Let me show you this bathroom. It's pretty magnificent.
Wow, that's pretty.
Again, we have cathedral ceilings in here. Separate water closet here, a double basin sink, large step-in jacuzzi tub with absolutely beautiful views.
I can't help but look outside when I'm in this room.
Yeah.
This is gorgeous.
Water overlooking their own private dock
Okay.
and 2 private boathouses. Brenda, I want to show you something that's really unusual, and you won't see this anywhere else. This is the club room. We have a bar over on this side and a spiral staircase that goes up to basically a crow's nest.
Oh, the view is to die for.
It is. Let me show
gorgeous.
you this. And we have a little telescope.
Wow.
The listing price on this house is $15 million.
Okay.
It will be an all-cash offer. Any type of financing that they would be done would be done through their private banking.
What, from your experience, have been expenses that you don't fully anticipate?
I've never had that question. It's interesting because I think that when people buy a house like this, it is a move-up house, and it's from a house that maybe was 8 or 9 million. So I thought you'd like this.
Yeah, this is great. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Brandon, good to see you. You
Good to be here.
picked a heck of a house.
What'd you think?
That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it was a perfect day. It was about 70 degrees, so looking out on the water was awesome.
And in fact, that's one key thing you have to keep in mind when looking to buy a house. You need to visit it several times, different times of day, different days of the week, especially if you're going to be commuting to work, and different types of weather and even different types of seasons, because that gorgeous house with those gorgeous weather, Annapolis, Maryland isn't always that pretty.
Well, and we know how emotional a decision on buying a house is. I mean, how many times have you heard from people who've said, Rick, we found the perfect house. It's a little bit more than we want to spend, but we've just got to have it.
And they don't think about the ongoing costs of maintaining that house.
And there's so many costs beyond just the purchase price. I mean, at closing, you're going to have thousands of dollars for escrow for taxes and insurance. You've got potentially a transfer tax. You've got to move, which is expensive. You've got to furnish the house. The costs go on and on.
The bigger the house, the more furniture you're going to need. And there's another rule of thumb that for every 5,000 square feet, you're going to need 1 full-time housekeeper.
Well, at that house, that was 15,000 square feet, so that'd be 3 permanent helpers.
So plan on spending $250,000 or so just for the hired help. And that's for inside the house. We're not even talking about the landscaping.
Well, and we spend the most money on housing. So when you stretch yourself and you buy too much, the problem is all of a sudden there's not enough money for everything else, like saving for retirement. So you've got to be very careful not to buy too much house, more than you can afford.
Houses like that are fun to go see, but for a lot of us, that's all we should go do is
Yeah, it'd be a dream.
go see them. Brandon, thanks very much.
You bet.
According to the Department of Agriculture, what's the average cost of raising a child from birth to age 18? The answer is coming right up.
At a recent conference, investment advisors were asked just one question. What did they think of past performance?
Past performance is akin to driving while looking only in your rearview mirror.
I wouldn't buy what was the hot item, say, a year ago. The leaders change, the losers change.
Only indicative of the past. Has nothing to do with the future.
So, it was in the past.
Not an indication of future results. Any assertion to the contrary or to the same is a federal offense. Past performance is irrelevant. It's not indicative of, that's not just a disclaimer, it's a fact.
What's the average cost of raising a child from birth to age 18?
360,000. $1 million?
Depends on the child.
$20,000, possibly a year, maybe?
The average cost of raising a child to age 18 is $227,000.
We're heading off now to Springfield. Mort, standing by. How are you, Mort?
Good morning.
How come?
Quick, easy question for you.
Oh, I love quick, easy questions.
Okay, in view of what Wall Street has done this past week, would this be a good time now for my wife to take money out of her IRA to meet the minimum requirements for the distribution?
Yes, if Wall Street is going to fall next week.
Otherwise, it makes sense to wait.
Yeah. So here's how you solve the problem, Mort. Since we always want to sell high,
right?
And we never know when high is because high is a relative term. Higher than what? So instead of trying to guess, certainly your wife is better off selling today than having sold a month ago or 2 months ago. But is it better than selling a month from now? Who knows? We don't know. So here's how you get off that roller coaster. Take 1/12 of the amount of money that your wife has to liquidate and do that on a monthly basis. Just liquidate a little bit every month, and this way you're not going to have to worry about it. Or, to turn it around a little differently, liquidate your annual amount in the same month every single year. So you can either average it out over the course of a year or average it out over the course of a decade. Do it every December of every year, or just do it every single month of every year. Does that make sense?
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. You're right.
Thank you much.
You're right. That was a quick and simple and easy question.
But Mort's question is really common. So to take a step back, when you turn 70 and a half, you have to start withdrawing from your IRAs and your retirement accounts. And how often do you get this question, Anderson? When do I do it? Let's assume for a minute that you don't really need that income. The person wants to reinvest it. But it's going to be taxable when it comes out. And so when do you do it? Is it better to take it now, or is it better to take it a month from now? I think your advice was, it really doesn't matter, because if you take it over 10 years and you look back over those last 10 years, you can probably point to several years where you had great timing and several years where you had lousy timing.
Right.
In the long run, it's all going to average out.
Yeah, it's not material.
Well, and if you're going to reinvest it anyway, then it truly doesn't matter when you're going to do it, because the money's going to be back in the investments.
Yeah,
most of it anyway.
Yeah, you're moving it from one bucket to another bucket. Doesn't make a whole lot of difference.
Conference room is the scariest place in the office right now. Nothing good happens in there. I went in there Friday. They stripped my health care plan back again. They got me on what I call the don't get sick plan. $30 copay gets you 2 Band-Aids and a bottle of NyQuil. I don't want to get fired, though. It's the worst. Bosses make getting fired sound like the best thing to happen to you since the Emancipation Proclamation. They lean in all lovingly. We don't think you're happy here. We're gonna have to let you go. Fly, little bird.
Hi, Rick. Based on the money that the government has put into the economy in the last several years, what's your gut feeling on when inflation might kick in?
Inflation's already kicked in. We are running inflation that's north of 3% per year, even in this economic environment. And that is not unusual. Since 1926, inflation's been averaging, according to Ibbotson & Associates, 3.2% per year. Well, that's important that we understand this, because at 3.2% a year, the cost of money doubles every 23 years. So think about your current income today. Whatever your income is right now, let's say that you're making $100,000 right now. In 23 years, you're going to need $200,000 to buy whatever it is you're buying today for $100,000. Now, let's say that you're 40 years old. In 23 years, you're 63. You're going to need twice as much income at age 63. Go 23 years after that. You're 86. You'll need 4 times as much money in your 80s as you have now in your 40s. 4 times as much income. If you're making $100,000 right now, you're going to need $400,000 in your 80s. That's at 3.2% inflation. But you're not even worried about 3.2% inflation. You're worried about hyperinflation. Remember the 70s? When we had 13%, 14%, and 15% inflation rates? That's what you're really worried about. And the fear is that the government has been injecting so much money into the economy as a result of the credit crisis of 2008 that this flooding of cash causes an oversupply of cash. And when you have an oversupply, it takes more dollars to do what they used to do, triggering higher and higher levels of inflation. We're not terribly worried about it. We are worried about inflation, but we're not worried about hyperinflation. And the reason is very simple. Although the government has been injecting a lot of money into the economy, it was doing so because no one else in the economy would. But I don't want to let us off the hook. We do need to be concerned about ordinary inflation. The cost of money will double every 20 to 25 years based on ordinary inflation, and that's enough to do you in. So you have to invest money in a manner to keep pace with the cost of living. And that means you need to buy assets that can grow with inflation. Bank CDs can't do that. Bank accounts can't do that. Checking and saving, money market funds, treasury bills, they can't do that, because they're worth $1 a share, and they're always worth $1 a share. You put 10 grand in the bank, it's always worth 10 grand. It earns interest, but the 10 grand is always 10 grand. Doesn't grow with inflation. You need to put at least some of your money into investments that have the opportunity to grow with inflation. Stocks can grow in value with inflation. Bonds can grow in value with inflation. Real estate can grow in value with inflation. Oil, gold, other real assets can, not saying they will, not saying they always do, but at least they can grow with inflation. And that's why we diversify. Some of the money is in super safe places where I don't have to worry about loss of principal. Other money is where I have the ability to offset the threat of inflation. And that's the best defense against an inflationary environment.
Real estate, Rick, is it make sense to rent or own right now?
Well, there's no question. The answer is yes. Today is a great time to either rent or buy. Now, of course, that doesn't seem to make any sense. You can't do both, right? In other words, let's turn the question inside out. It's not a notion of looking at the current status of the real estate market and deciding should you buy real estate or should you rent instead. We need to look inward. We need to look at our own personal financial situation. For some folks, renting is the smartest thing to do right now. For others, buying is the smartest thing to do right now. So how do you figure out which one is right for you? It's real simple. What's your situation? Are you in a situation where you know that if you were to move into a new home, whether you were to buy it or rent it, if you were to move into a new home, are you likely to stay there for the next 7 to 10 years? See, a lot of folks are in a lifestyle where the next 7 to 10 years are going to be radically different from today. If you're just getting started in your career, or if you're not yet married but you think you will, if you don't yet have children but you think you will, if you have not yet moved to the city or state that you think you're going to long-term live in, well, for all those reasons, Buying now is a terrible idea. You shouldn't buy a house unless you're planning to live in it for 7 to 10 years. Which raises the next part. Let's assume that you are secure lifestyle-wise and where you're going to live. The question now becomes, can you afford it? Can you afford to buy the kind of a home that you want to own, that you'll continue to own for 7 to 10 years? If you can afford it, go right ahead and buy it. Oh, I know what you're thinking. You're worried that with real estate prices in flux, you're afraid that prices will drop. Well, so what? That didn't stop you from buying a car, did it? You knew the car was going to fall in value when you bought it, but you bought it anyway. Why? Because it met your lifestyle needs. Same thing with a house. You don't buy a house because you think it's going to grow in value. If it does, serendipity, fabulous. Consider yourself lucky, not smart. You don't buy a house believing it'll grow in value. You buy it because it meets your lifestyle needs. It's close to schools and work and church and shopping and far from relatives. And if it doesn't meet those criteria, don't buy the house. Simple as that.
Like, I told my wife, like, let's just give money for presents. She's like, that's a really lame present. I'm like, how is money ever a lame present? Have you ever given someone money and they're like, really? Really? Money? Really? You couldn't have bought me some isotoners or like blue blockers or something? You had to give me US currency that I could use to purchase anything I wanted. Lame. Like, no, it's not. It's a dandy gift.
If you spend $1,000 a day, how long will it take you to spend $1 billion? The answer is coming right up.
Mort Zuckerman began his career in Manhattan real estate with almost nothing. He's now among the 400 richest Americans. In addition to his vast real estate holdings, Mort is the owner of the New York Daily News and editor-in-chief of U.S. News and World Report. And I talked with him at his offices in New York. Mort, you're one of the wealthiest men in America. Forbes is constantly putting you on their list of the wealthiest people in the country. When you began your career, was it your expectation or hope or goal to make such a list, or was that simply a byproduct of what you were doing?
No, it was quite simply a byproduct. I started off owing $500 to the Harvard Law School and had a 6-year-old Chevy and had not the vaguest idea when I got my first offer of a job at $6,750, which I thought was a fortune.
Annually?
Annually. I must have had a surprised look on my face. He misinterpreted it. He thought I thought it was too little when I thought it was too much. So he raised it to $7,750, and I realized even then that my best negotiations are when I keep my mouth shut, not when I talk.
The reason I asked if you had any intention of hitting such a list as the Forbes list is that many people feel that people who are wealthy have that as their primary goal.
I really just wanted to enjoy what I was doing, and I had 2 law degrees, and I thought I would have to practice law. And just by a fluke, I just decided to heck with that. I really don't enjoy it, and so I got a job in the real estate world. And as I keep on saying, I never worked a day in my life. It's never been work for me. So that's exactly what I hoped for.
Do you find that the real estate opportunities of today are better or worse than when you got started?
Well, you know, when you start off with pretty much nothing, you don't see it in terms of great opportunities. You just sort of work your way step by step. I think we are in a very, very weak economic condition, so we began to get nervous back in 2006 and 2007 about where the economy is going. And as a result of that, my company sold $4.5 billion of real estate. And we were in a position to then turn around and buy things that otherwise would never have been available. So in a way, the downturns, if you anticipate them, can also turn out to be provide opportunities you wouldn't otherwise get.
Richard Branson once said that if you want to become a billionaire, get $4 billion and start an airline. Would you have a similar piece of advice for people that are thinking of getting involved in newspaper business?
I have to say, I didn't go into it to make a lot of money. I went into it because I was fascinated by it. I still am fascinated by it.
It's as much of a hobby as it is...
No, it's not a hobby because it doesn't work as a hobby, okay? For it to be taken seriously both by the journalists and by the public, it's got to be vibrant and viable. Okay, and we are.
Not all of your money is tied up in real estate and in newspapers. As a natural byproduct of the success of those businesses is that you come upon a significant amount of cash that requires reinvestment. When the Bernie Madoff scandal hit, it was revealed that one of the managers you had hired was himself caught up in that scandal. Talk about that.
Well, let me put it this way. If I had known that, contrary to the representations that were made in the documents that on the basis of which I invested with this individual, that he had put the entire fund, and it was, I think, $6 billion, into one investment outlet, I never would have invested with him, because nobody ever does that. You diversify, and that was what they represented. To say that I was unhappy when I found this out doesn't capture it. I don't mind losing money, but not this way.
Any lessons that you learned as a result of this?
The lesson is the same lesson that I apply to everything, which is diversification. These happen in life, you know. There are just going to be setbacks. You just don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
In addition to being very well known for being one of America's wealthiest individuals, you're also very well known for your philanthropy. Talk about your activities.
Again, you know, I don't want this to sound corny, but having started off with essentially nothing other than some ambition, you sort of feel a certain obligation to give back, right? So the question is, to what? Well, because of a family illness, I got very involved in the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and I ended up as the president of that board and was very active there. And similarly, when I moved to New York, I got active in Sloan Kettering and was very active there. And I, again, had reason to be very grateful to Sloan Kettering, who did some wonderful work to help a member of my family. So I was very supportive of that institution. I was even before, but particularly afterwards, and I'm the principal benefactor of a major new research institute they're setting up. I could go on and on. I mean, there really are things that touch your lives that I think inspire you to find an outlet for wanting to give back. And, you know, knock wood, I'll be able to continue doing that for a while.
Mort, thanks so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
If you spend $1,000 a day, how long will it take you to spend $1 billion?
20 years.
1,000,000 days.
100 years.
You better start now, because the answer is 3,000 years.
Before we go, a couple of thoughts about big numbers. We noticed that when we asked people on the street today's question, if you spent $1,000 a day, how long would it take to spend $1 billion? Well, you know it'll take 3,000 years, but almost everyone we asked got the question wrong. And you probably find it hard to believe that there could be a house that costs $15 million, or the fact that it costs $250,000 to raise a kid. These are big numbers, and we tend to make bad decisions when faced with them. But all these numbers are identifiable, they're predictable, and most importantly, they're manageable. So when you're facing a big number, like how much you need to save for retirement, don't let those numbers intimidate you. Just get the help of people who are used to dealing with big numbers. A good financial advisor can show you how to turn big, scary numbers into small, manageable figures. So if you're confronted with a big number and you're stuck, an independent, objective, fee-based financial advisor can show you how to cut those big numbers down to size. And that's the truth about money. I'm Ric Edelman. See you next week.